Have you ever wondered what really goes on behind the closed doors of billionaires, the secrets they keep not just from the world but even from the people closest to them? Imagine a man so powerful, so influential, that his every move is tracked by the media, his every word makes headlines. And yet, buried inside his empire was a truth so delicate, so dangerous, that if it ever got out, it could destroy not just his reputation but his entire legacy. Tonight, I'm going to take you inside that secret. And let me tell you this, right at the start, what you're about to hear is not the kind of story you click away from. If you stay with me until the end, you will understand why this billionaire hid his assistant from the world, why she was his best-kept secret, and most importantly, why her leaving changed everything. You came here for answers, and I promise, you're going to get them, but only if you don't miss a single second of what's coming next. Now let's get real for a second. You and I both know that life isn't always about the headlines we see on social media, or the fairy tale romances the world pretends to show. Real life, especially when it comes to billionaires, is filled with secrets, sacrifices, and decisions that would shock anyone who thought they had it all figured out. And as you're watching this, I want you to think about one thing: how far would you go to keep someone by your side if you believed they were the only person who truly understood you? Would you risk everything? Your image, your wealth, your carefully crafted life? This is exactly where our story begins. And I'm not just telling you another romance or drama. You're about to experience a powerful billionaire love story with betrayal, suspense, and an unexpected twist that will keep you guessing until the very end. The billionaire at the heart of this story is Daniel Cross, a man who could buy anything he wanted, from skyscrapers to private islands, a man who was praised in magazines as one of the most eligible bachelors in America. He had that cold, untouchable aura, the kind of presence that made people nervous to even stand in the same room with him. But beneath that polished surface, beneath the expensive suits and the sharp boardroom negotiations, there was something no one saw coming. His life was not as perfect as the public believed. In fact, it was far from it. And the only person who knew the real Daniel Cross was not his investors, not his so-called friends, not even the women who tried to chase his fortune. It was his assistant, Emily. Emily was unlike anyone Daniel had ever met. She wasn't drawn to his money or his fame. She wasn't impressed by the cars or the jets. She was quiet, smart, and had a fire inside her that she never showed to the world. But Daniel saw it, and maybe that's why he trusted her more than anyone else. She became his right hand, his confidant, the one who knew what meetings he hated, the one who could read the look in his eyes before he even spoke. But here's the twist that nobody knew: Emily wasn't just his assistant. She was his secret, the one part of his life he kept hidden away, not because he was ashamed, but because he was afraid of what the world would do if they found out. And if you think about it, doesn't that sound familiar? How many times in life do we hide the people we care about the most, not because we don't value them, but because we're terrified of losing them if others interfere? That's the psychology behind Daniel's decision, and it's something that will make you rethink what love really means when power and money are involved. But here's where it gets complicated. Secrets don't stay buried forever. The more Daniel tried to hide Emily, the more the world started to notice little cracks in his perfect image. Whispers began, rumors spread, and soon people started asking questions Daniel didn't want to answer. At the same time, Emily herself began to feel the weight of living in the shadows. Imagine being the one person who means everything to someone, yet never being able to stand by their side in the light of day. No photos together, no acknowledgements, not even a hint that you exist. For a while, Emily told herself it was enough, that being close to Daniel, even in secret, was worth it. But as time went on, the pressure grew, and the silence started to break her from the inside. And this, right here, is the point where the mystery deepens. Because one day, without warning, Emily left. She walked away from Daniel Cross, the man who had the world at his feet, and she vanished into the crowd like she was never even there. The question is why? What pushed her to walk away from the man every other woman dreamed of having? What truth forced her hand? Was it love? Was it betrayal? Or was it something even bigger? Something so dangerous that she had no choice but to disappear before the secret destroyed them both. I need you to stay with me here, because what's coming next is the part of the story that nobody saw coming, not even Daniel himself. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end, you will understand why Emily's leaving wasn't just a goodbye. It was the spark that set off a chain of events that would shake Daniel's empire to its core. But for now, let's step back. Let's go inside their world. And let's uncover exactly how a billionaire's assistant became his most dangerous secret. Because when she left, everything changed. And the real story, the one that will keep you on the edge of your seat, starts right there. Daniel Cross had built his empire on control. Every decision, every calculated risk, every empire-shaping deal was crafted with precision, like a grand chess game where he never allowed himself to lose. Yet what no one ever realized was that control didn't come without a cost. Daniel's life, while glamorous on the outside, was suffocating on the inside. Behind the boardroom walls and glossy magazine covers, he lived with shadows made up of broken trust, family betrayals, and a past that still haunted him in ways no one could see. And in those shadows stood Emily, the one person who saw Daniel stripped of the billionaire mask the world idolized. To the public, she was a name buried deep inside employee records, an anonymous assistant who booked flights and answered emails. But in truth, she was the anchor of Daniel's chaotic world, a secret thread woven so tightly into his life that he couldn't imagine functioning without her. Yet it was that very secrecy that created cracks neither of them knew how to repair. The story of Emily and Daniel wasn't as simple as billionaire romance or assistant affair. It was deeper, layered with hidden motivations and unspoken words. Emily hadn't chosen this life out of ambition or desire for wealth. In fact, she came from a modest family background, raised by a single mother in a small town far removed from Daniel-esque glittering skyscrapers and luxury penthouses. She had dreams of her own, dreams of working in publishing, of writing stories that could touch hearts. Life, however, doesn't always follow the path we imagine. A chance encounter, a recommendation from a friend, and a twist of fate had landed her in Daniel's office years ago. What started as a temporary job had grown into something she never could have predicted. She had become indispensable, not just for her efficiency, but because Daniel found in her a quiet strength he lacked in himself. He trusted her silence, her discretion, her ability to see him as a human being rather than a walking headline. But as close as they were, Emily carried her own secrets, ones she never dared to share, not even with Daniel. If you look closely at Emily's life, you'd see that her struggle wasn't only about love hidden in the shadows. She was constantly torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Imagine knowing the kind of information that could shatter the world's illusion of a billionaire icon, the confidential deals, the whispered scandals, the personal fears Daniel never confessed to anyone else. Emily carried all of it, a heavy burden hidden behind her quiet smile. And while she played her role as the invisible assistant, she wrestled with the gnawing truth that being Daniel's secret meant never being seen for who she truly was. Viewers, let me ask you, how long could you live as someone's hidden world, knowing that the very person who leaned on you every day was also the one holding you back from stepping into the light? That is where Emily's pain grew roots, and it was only a matter of time before it broke through the surface. But Daniel's perspective was no less complicated. To him, Emily was more than just an assistant, though he would never admit it out loud. In the cold emptiness of his penthouse nights, when the city lights glittered outside his windows, she was the voice that grounded him, the reminder that beneath the billions and the power he was still just a man craving connection. Daniel had been burned too many times before: gold diggers chasing his fortune, fake friends using his influence, even family members betraying his trust for money. Every relationship he had ever known ended with manipulation or heartbreak. So when Emily walked into his office with nothing to prove and nothing to gain, he didn't just see an employee, he saw someone real. And in that reality he found safety. The irony was brutal. The one person who gave him a sense of belonging was also the one person he could never let the world see, because if they did, he believed they would ruin her, just as they had tried to ruin him. And here's where the layers of the story deepen. Outside of Daniel and Emily's hidden connection, other forces were moving silently in the background. The media, always hungry for the next scandal, had begun to sniff around Daniel's life more aggressively. A rival billionaire, Adrian Kane, had been feeding whispers to reporters, hoping to expose Daniel's weaknesses and climb higher in the race for dominance. Kane suspected Daniel was hiding something, and in the high-stakes game of wealth and power, even a rumor could be weaponized. Meanwhile, Daniel's board of directors had grown restless, pushing him to settle down, marry into another powerful family, and solidify alliances that would keep his empire untouchable. Every headline about his bachelor lifestyle made investors nervous, and the pressure mounted for Daniel to make a move. But how could he, when the one person he wanted was the one person he couldn't reveal? On the other side, Emily was battling her own subplot. Her mother's health had been deteriorating quietly, and medical bills piled higher than her modest salary could ever cover. Daniel, of course, had offered to help, but Emily refused, too proud to let herself be saved by his money. She wanted to prove she could stand on her own 2 feet, even as the financial strain tightened its grip on her. To make matters worse, her younger brother had fallen into the wrong crowd, entangled in debts with people who didn't forgive easily. Emily found herself caught between two worlds: the luxury of Daniel's hidden universe and the harsh reality of her family's struggles. Every day she carried both burdens, never showing Daniel the full weight of what she was enduring. The tension between them grew in subtle ways. Late nights in the office, conversations that stopped just short of confessions, glances that lingered a second too long. There were moments when Emily almost broke the silence, when she wanted to scream that she was tired of being invisible. And there were moments when Daniel almost reached out, almost admitted that his entire empire would crumble without her. But fear always won. Fear of losing what little they had, fear of exposing the truth, fear of destroying each other in the process. And as fear grew, so did distance. The audience needs to understand this. When Emily left, it wasn't just a personal decision. It was a storm that had been building for years, fueled by every secret kept, every truth unspoken, every sacrifice made in silence. And just when Daniel believed he had finally contained the world around him, just when he thought his empire was secure, Emily's departure ripped open everything he tried so hard to control. The board questioned his stability. The media circled like sharks in Adrian Kane. He knew this was his chance to strike. But the mystery that lingers, the part you must stay tuned for, is not just why Emily left, but what she took with her. Because when she walked away, she didn't just vanish. She carried something that could either destroy Daniel Cross or save him in ways no one expected. Was it information? A truth buried deep in his empire? Or was it something? The note Daniel found that night was not long, not emotional, and certainly not what he expected from the one person who had stood by his side through every storm. It was just 7 words written in her delicate handwriting. Some secrets are meant to be exposed. Daniel read it again and again, trying to convince himself it wasn't real, that maybe it wasn't even from her. But deep down he knew. Emily had left, and those words weren't just a goodbye, they were a threat, a warning, or maybe even a promise that whatever she knew was bigger than he had imagined. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the kind of fear that no billion-dollar deal or army of lawyers could protect him from. And as much as he wanted to believe Emily had walked away quietly, something told him that her disappearance was going to drag his entire empire into the kind of chaos the world was waiting to feast on. The following days were a blur of speculation, whispers, and mounting pressure. Daniel's board demanded answers. Investors threatened to pull out, and the media had already begun circling with questions about a mystery woman linked to the billionaire. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent years ensuring Emily remained invisible, and now her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. To make matters worse, Adrian Kane, his ruthless rival, seemed to know more than he should. Subtle comments in press interviews, suggestive hints about Daniel hiding a scandal, and even rumors planted online started to shape a dangerous narrative. Daniel was no stranger to being in the spotlight, but this time it was different. This wasn't about numbers or business, this was about his private life, his deepest secret, and the one woman he couldn't protect anymore. Meanwhile, Emily wasn't simply gone. She had stepped into a new world where she no longer had the shield of Daniel's wealth or power. She had slipped back into the reality she had tried so hard to keep separate: her mother's declining health, the hospital bills piling up, and her brother's dangerous entanglement with people who had no patience for debt. What Daniel never realized was that Emily's departure wasn't only about being tired of living in the shadows, it was also about survival. She had been pushed into a corner where silence was no longer an option, where protecting Daniel's secrets clashed with protecting her family. And sometimes, no matter how much you love someone, blood ties pull harder. But here's the twist that Daniel never saw coming. Emily wasn't just carrying emotional baggage when she walked out. She had access to files, private accounts, and confidential negotiations that could expose not only Daniel's vulnerabilities, but also shake the foundation of his empire. She never intended to use them. She was loyal to him in ways he never truly understood. Yet when her brother's life was threatened, when her mother's treatment required money she didn't have, Emily realized those secrets could be her only bargaining chip. It wasn't betrayal in her eyes, it was survival. But in Daniel's world, intent didn't matter. If those files landed in the wrong hands, if Adrian Kane got hold of them, the damage would be catastrophic. Daniel's paranoia grew. Every day without Emily was another day the walls closed in tighter. He began to suspect everyone around him: his staff, his business partners, even his closest allies. The note haunted him, and the idea that Emily might expose him consumed his every waking thought. Yet beneath the fear was something even more dangerous. The ache of losing her. For all his billions, for all his power, he couldn't bring her back, couldn't undo the damage, and that helplessness ate away at the part of him he tried to keep buried. The cold, untouchable billionaire suddenly looked human, vulnerable, and that vulnerability was exactly what his enemies were waiting for. And then came the shocker that shifted everything. One morning, a headline splashed across every major financial news outlet: "Anonymous source leaks confidential cross-enterprises dealings." The articles didn't reveal everything, but they showed just enough to hint that someone close to Daniel had access to information the public was never supposed to see. Investors panicked, stock prices wavered, and Adrian Kane seized the opportunity to position himself as a stronger, more stable leader in the industry. Daniel immediately thought of Emily. Was this her? Was this her way of punishing him for the years of hiding, of keeping her in the dark? Or had she fallen into a trap, forced to use what she knew because she had no other choice? The doubt ate at him, because as much as he wanted to blame her, he couldn't forget the loyalty she had shown for years. Deep down, he wondered, was Emily really the enemy, or was she in danger herself? Emily, on the other hand, was facing her own unexpected twist. The files she carried were never meant to be leaked to the press. She had used them only to secure quick money to protect her brother, never realizing she was walking straight into Kane's carefully laid trap. The rival billionaire had been waiting for a crack in Daniel's armor, and Emily, in her desperation, had unknowingly handed him the opening. Kane wasn't just after Daniel's empire, he wanted to destroy him completely, and Emily had become his most valuable weapon. What she thought was a private negotiation to help her family had turned into a dangerous game where every move was being manipulated. By the time she realized it, it was too late. Now the tension was unbearable. Daniel was scrambling to contain the damage, his empire teetering on the edge, while Emily found herself torn between saving her family and protecting the man she had tried so hard to leave behind. And the cruel truth was that no matter what she chose, someone was going to get hurt. The love story that had once been a hidden comfort was now a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode in front of the entire world. But just when Daniel thought he had lost everything, just when he believed Emily had betrayed him, a new piece of information landed on his desk, proof that the leak had come directly from Emily. But from someone else. Daniel Cross had always believed he could outmaneuver anyone. That no rival, no scandal, no betrayal could ever topple what he had built. Yet in the weeks following Emily's disappearance, he came to realize that his empire wasn't threatened by boardroom politics or ruthless competitors. It was unraveling because of a single choice, a single person he had hidden away and underestimated in ways that even he didn't understand until she was gone. The world around him had turned hostile, investors questioned his leadership, the media painted him as a man concealing dangerous truths, and Adrian Kane moved in for the kill, seizing every opportunity to paint himself as the steadier, stronger alternative. But beneath all the noise and chaos, Daniel knew the real battle wasn't with Kane or the headlines, it was with himself. And with Emily, who held both the keys to his downfall and the possibility of his redemption. Emily, meanwhile, was trapped in a storm of her own making. Her decision to walk away from Daniel had been fueled by pride, exhaustion, and desperation. But once Kane's manipulation became clear, she realized how dangerous her choice had truly been. What she had thought was a quiet negotiation to protect her family had spiraled into something much darker. Kane wasn't just interested in exposing Daniel, he wanted to destroy him completely. And Emily had unknowingly given him leverage to do it. The files she had accessed, the secrets she thought she could control, were now in the hands of someone who thrived on destruction. She felt betrayed by her own judgment, torn apart by guilt. But she also knew she couldn't go back to Daniel, unless she was ready to confront the truth about what she had done. The climax came when Daniel and Emily's worlds finally collided again. Not in the privacy of his penthouse or the quiet late nights of the office, but in the middle of a storm orchestrated by Kane. Kane had arranged a press conference where he planned to unveil documents that would expose Daniel's supposed corruption, deals that would sink his company and erase his credibility. Daniel was prepared for the fight, but deep down, he knew Kane had something more, something personal. He feared Kane would reveal Emily, drag her into the spotlight, and shatter what little protection Daniel had managed to give her. He stood on the stage in front of flashing cameras and cold, watchful eyes, ready to defend himself, when the unexpected happened. Emily walked in. The room fell silent as she stepped forward, her presence shocking not just Daniel but the entire audience. She looked nothing like the hidden assistant she had once been. She looked strong, determined, and ready to tell the truth. And in that moment, the story shifted. Emily revealed that Kane's so-called evidence was not the product of Daniel's corruption, but the result of Kane's manipulation and theft. She explained how she had been cornered, how she had handed over files under pressure, believing she was saving her family, only to realize Kane had twisted her desperation into a weapon. Her confession wasn't easy, and she didn't frame herself as a victim. She took responsibility, owning her mistakes, and then turned the spotlight on Kane, exposing his tactics and forcing the world to see who the true villain really was. For Daniel, it was both a moment of fear and relief. Fear, because Emily had finally stepped out of the shadows and into the firestorm. He had tried so hard to shield her from relief because she had chosen to stand by him even after everything that had happened, even after all the pain and distance. Kane, blindsided by Emily's courage, tried to fight back, but the tide had turned. Reporters dug deeper, investors began to question his credibility instead, and the board that had once pressured Daniel to settle down now saw him in a new light, not as a scandal-plagued billionaire but as a man who had faced betrayal, owned his truth, and survived. The resolution wasn't neat or perfect, because life rarely is. Daniel's empire had been scarred by the ordeal, and Emily's trust in him would never be repaired overnight. But in the aftermath, there was something more powerful than perfection. There was honesty. Daniel finally admitted what he had been too afraid to say for years. He told Emily she wasn't just his assistant, she wasn't just a secret he had to keep hidden. She was the only person who had ever truly mattered, the only one who saw him for who he really was. And though she didn't give him an easy answer, though she reminded him of the pain of being invisible for so long, she stayed. Not because of his wealth, not because of the empire he could offer, but because she believed in the man he could be if he was willing to let go of fear. The final twist came weeks later, when Daniel discovered something Emily had never told him. Hidden among the files she had taken was evidence of a betrayal, not from her, not from Kane, but from within Daniel's own circle, a trusted executive who had been leaking information for years, quietly aligning with Kane to weaken Daniel's company from the inside. Emily had stumbled on it by accident, but she had kept it from Daniel because she knew the truth would devastate him. When he confronted her about it, she simply said, "Some secrets are meant to be exposed." The same words she had left in her note, the same words that had haunted him, only now he understood what she meant. Not every secret was meant to be hidden forever. Some needed to come out, even if they hurt, because only then could healing begin. And so the story closed not with a perfect fairy tale ending, but with a powerful lesson. Daniel learned that control was an illusion, that love and trust required vulnerability, and that the empire he had built wasn't truly strong until it was honest. Emily learned that her voice mattered, that she didn't have to live in the shadows to be valued, and that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most